I'm calling to order the City of Kaiser Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, February 14th, 2018. Because it is St. Valentine's Day, as the chair, I wanted you to sweeten you up a little bit. So there's a cupcake on everybody's table, and if there's some extra back there if we need it. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes of January, or January 2018 meeting? Any changes? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion for approval. Crystal?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion for approval of the 2018 minutes as written. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving right ahead. On the Planning Commission, this is the time of appearance of interested citizens. This time is made available for those who wish to speak about an issue that is not on tonight's agenda. And looking out in the auditorium here, there is nobody, and there's nobody been signed up to talk. So we're moving on to the public hearing.
All right, thank you.
So I'm going to open for the public hearing.
Thank you, Chair Sangster and Commissioners. So tonight we have before you a text amendment of 3 separate sections of the Kaiser Development Code. Section 3.101, 3.113, and 3.202. 3.101 and 3.202 are really just administrative, basically procedural requirements in the code, and it lists application types. There's a chart that has a matrix. So essentially those are only being amended to simply add in a Kaiser Station master plan amendment as a application type to give guidance as to how they're processed. And the crux of the amendment is in 3.113. Currently that section governs all Kaiser Station master plans and the criteria and the conditions and the submittal requirements under which those master plan applications are processed. What we've found over the last several years is that the master plans have had to be amended from time to time due to either market factors or new tenants coming in with some minor modifications to site plans or building massing or things like that. And previously we've had no specific process to actually do a master plan amendment. So the amendments have had to be basically processed as a brand new application. So what the language that we're proposing tonight basically creates a clear path forward to do a amendment to a Kaiser Station master plan. And it also kind of clarifies what's expected of those applications, as opposed to maybe the full kit and caboodle of everything you would apply for a brand new application. It specifies down that it's essentially the things necessary to make a decision on that specific change. The other piece, if you'll remember, not so long ago, we came to Planning Commission to kind of ask permission to take a master plan amendment to go directly to City Council so as not to kind of encumber our time with public hearings that were minor changes that were kind of insignificant. So the other thing we're proposing specifically is to clarify that an amendment to a Kaiser Station master plan would bypass Planning Commission and be heard directly at the council level. So really, that's really the crux of what we're going after. I know Mr. Lawyer and I had a conversation this afternoon, and I'll let him kind of talk about a couple of the suggestions he had, which I thought were good. The one thing I will say is our city attorney is not here today, but he wanted me to make sure that as we consider these amendments, if you guys see so fit to make a recommendation to take language forward to council, he would like to make sure that it's clear in the motion that you give staff some leniency to fix some of the kind of scrivenery error things that may exist, because the term master plan is all throughout the Kaiser Development Code in different sections. And by creating this amendment process, he had a concern kind of late in the game, which was one that I hadn't really thought about, frankly, that with creating this master plan amendment process, we're creating a very specific defined process. And so we don't want to inadvertently create a conflict in other sections of the code. So there may be some tiny tweaks to words or the addition of, like, say, the term amendment in some other sections that really are more kind of along that lines of like almost like Scrivener's error. But he would like you to consider giving us the latitude to fix those types of minor things as well before it were to go on to council. So with that, I would entertain any questions that you have on the language proposed and hopefully answer them. Yes. My boss has a question. What's happening?
No, not a question. Actually, Matt caught me last night, and he asked me about trying to understand what this really meant. And I'd responded to him that yes, it applies to the Kaiser Station, but hopefully it applies to all master plans. We have a couple of things in that are, for example, in the mixed use zone, mixed use, we also make a reference to a master plan. What's that? Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah, we have, Matt and I talked about this. I was going to kind of let him talk about his concerns, but it's fine. We do have references in the code to doing a master plan, although it's not one that would be viewed as specific to this process. In the city of Kaiser, we have two activity centers. One's the McNary Activity Center, which encompasses Stats Lake and kind of the northern section of River Road up to the McNary Business Park there, like where MAPS is and everything. So there's that McNary Activity Center that's been in existence since I think the early 90s. And then there's the Kaiser Station. And those are our two activity centers identified in the comprehensive plan. When the Kaiser Station was adopted back in 2003, there was a very specific process created with specific review criteria for anything done in the Kaiser Station, and it's even split down between the 4 sub-areas of A, B, C, and D, so there's some different goals and policies and criteria within the different sub-areas. The McNary Activity Center is different in that when it was created, they were looking at things as from a design plan vernacular, but found that it was a little bit too encumbering to put a high level of requirement on individual property owners. So instead of creating a big process, they chose to adopt the mixed-use zone, which was a very different rendition than it is today, but they created a mixed-use zone that had regulations within the zone for every property in that activity center. And then in addition, there's a requirement in the McNary Activity Center, if someone comes in to do a subdivision or a new development, they would have to get a conditional use, and part of that conditional use review would be to provide a master plan that shows, and I think there's like 3 criteria or something, that's traffic circulation, pedestrian orientation. There's just a very minimal amount, not like the Kaiser Station master plans, which are very detailed in nature. So right now we have some wiggle room in the code as far as what a master plan is versus a master plan as regulated by section 3.113. So
all that to say, there are several moving parts here. So I beg forgiveness for an incorrect answer. And we also have our Kaiser revitalization plan that is just kicking off here, and that intends to look at the McNary Activity Center plan and try to coordinate that better with the other plans, River Road Renaissance, etc. And so there's going to be a lot of legislative work that comes out of that process. And so, so I'm struggling with, my desire is that we do a good job of coordinating all these different moving parts in the code. We make references to master plans outside of Kaiser Station plan. However, knowing that this was developed specifically within the confines of the Kaiser Station plan, which I kind of got messed up. Sorry. So what we're proposing to you is that language that is specific in the Kaiser Station plan language, and it would only apply specifically to these amendments that we have on a regular basis to that plan. If you wanted to hit the pause button, we could do that, and we would come back to you with, if we wanted to do a more comprehensive look at it, then we would come back to you next month with something a little more comprehensive. So, and I say that we because I have a big mouse in my pocket here to my right. Big, very big.
Matt, you had,
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. So, really what it boiled down to is accessibility as it relates to the public process and people meaningfully participating in land use discussions, which is a terribly difficult thing to do anyways, even if you know land use. But if you don't know it, things can become awfully complicated. And so I tried to look at it sort of through that lens and was immediately lost as it related to where we start in the recommendation for, I think it's 3.11302, which is adding in, 3.10103, where we add the Kaiser Station Master Plan Amendment language under E. And then in the table, it also says Kaiser Station Master Plan Review Amendment, which is fine. You know, it makes sense. It gives you the roadmap to sort of track. But then as you actually get specifically into 3.113.02, then it starts to sort of interchange the language as it relates to master plans and Kaiser Station master plans. And my brain just kind of said, wait a minute, are we talking about two different things? Are we talking about one thing? So then I continued on and got into the actual language on, where are we at here? So 3.113.04 sub C, sub 6, and 6A and 6E, again, interchanging the Kaiser Station plan, Kaiser Station master plan, Kaiser Station master plan. And so I was going, okay, I was having sort of an overload. And then I thought, okay, well, I think that what's happening here is we're talking about one thing, which is the Kaiser Station master plan, because under 3.113, that is essentially the Kaiser Station master plan. And then it got even more confusing as I went into 3.113.06, and we only talk about, or it's only addressed as a master plan. And I thought, okay, so I went for the giggle check, I got the PDF, and I hit master plan, and it took me right to this section. So from a lay perspective, I thought if I'm trying to look at land use and I look at comprehensive plans because I know that's a thing, and I look at master plans because I know that's a thing, I'm going to base any sort of master plan design entirely off what's going on in this section that only relates to the Kaiser Station area. And so my immediate response was, okay, well, if that's all inclusive, then maybe the recommendation would be to just add Kaiser Station before master plan in all of these sections to make it very clear. However, after being wisely tutored by our senior planner, there is an opportunity to look at sort of the master plan conversation as a wholesale and say, okay, do we want to maybe recommend leaving the Kaiser Station master plan language in the Kaiser Station master plan sort of 3.113, and then maybe break out a separate master plan process for the other areas, or just do a wholesale removal of that master plan conversation and amendments and include that and make it an all-inclusive conversation for the development code altogether. So that was kind of, again, getting lost, finding the track, coming up with sort of an initial thought process and recommendation specifically as it relates to the Kaiser Station master plan, but then also taking into account the other master plan-ish type things that exist in the city of Kaiser. Anybody else as confused as I was?
The only other thing to make sure that we keep straight as we go through this is to add to the confusion, the Kaiser Station design plan is the overall Kaiser Station plan. The amendments are what are specified that are required in that design plan. So we just want to be careful as we go through, and we will go through it again to make sure that it is very clear what we're talking about. An adopted master plan is what is to be amended. The Kaiser Station design plan is, that would be a whole legislative different process. And so just keep that in mind as you go through and read these terms.
I think Commissioner Lawyer has a point, but I understand what you're trying to do is just focus on Kaiser Station to help the development that we know is going on and will be going on there, in being able to tweak it with the developers real easy. So I understand, but the term master plan is just, we've used it too many places.
So what would you suggest we do then?
I'd like to have it as Matt suggested, separated. This is strictly on Kaiser Station, and clearly identified Kaiser Station only.
And then, just
But that's,
just so I understand, then come back with a more comprehensive, I would imagine the attorney is going to want to make sure that they're very well coordinated, if that's what you're saying.
that's,
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
yeah, you've I think that's kind of what,
Well, I think, you know, again, I think to fulfill the what's before us, as I understand it, really, I think just adding Kaiser Station Master Plan fulfills the need right now for the current ask, right? And in terms of identifying process for other master plans that may not necessarily fit in the same box as the Kaiser Station Master Plan, because we're talking about two totally different type things. I mean, we're not really putting houses out at Kaiser Station per se, but they're doing them possibly in this mixed residential or this mixed use zone at the McNary, I can't remember what it's called now, but activity center.
Activity center.
Right. So maybe I think my initial thought was we just add the Kaiser Station to the master plan language in 3.113 to make it very clear that everything in 3.113 is specifically designed for the Kaiser Station master plan process. And then if we so determine that maybe there's an opportunity to look at it as a wholesale master plan discussion, maybe that's a separate topic outside of what we're discussing in the current request. And really, it was just an opportunity to clarify and add language to make it a little more clearer in 3.113.
other commissioners? Gary?
I have a question, I think. Nate, you mentioned one of the things that's going on is the revitalization plan that's just getting started. When the product of that is completed, yeah, I saw the light. Would we then maybe need to revisit that again? I mean, is it possible that maybe we're pushing this ahead and should maybe wait until see what the outcome of that product is and then address them at one time?
Very much so. We fully expect there to be some adjustments in precisely these kinds of things. So that would not be a bad thing. And we're comfortable either way. We would be comfortable if you want to see how that might look, we can certainly come back to it. If you want to defer it to this work that is going to be taking place this next year, over the course of this year, we're certainly comfortable doing that as well.
Is there a downside to deferring this? Is, in terms of development or whatever, attracting people?
I think the only thing that could possibly be perceived as a downside is that in between now, I mean, and with the proposed language, I mean, it really was intended to be very surgically specific to Kaiser Station. So I think with making the changes that Matt has suggested to bring in a little more clarity, that's really easy. I mean, that's 10 minutes of changing the Word document and getting it good to go. The one thing is if we were to look at a more, and honestly, I personally hadn't really thought about the bigger comprehensive look until Matt had posed a couple of the questions. And I was like, that's actually a very good point. Maybe we should talk about that. And so I think the only thing that possibly could be perceived as I wouldn't call it a negative, but maybe a lost opportunity is that if something were to come in now, before we're done with the revitalization grant program, in those areas that are designated as mixed use currently, or within the McNary Activity Center, or down on Cherry Avenue, there's a brick of mixed use stuff. We have an ability to require a master plan, like a master site plan, showing the connectivity and those kind of, there's a few criteria that exist in the code or in the McNary Activity Center plan. We wouldn't have the same kind of reach that something like a Kaiser Station plan process, where you have public hearings before Planning Commission and before Council, and a lot bigger public engagement process takes place. That currently doesn't really exist for those other, I'll call them master plan lights, for an easy way to view it. So that'd be the only thing I could see where maybe you'd have a lost opportunity. I think the difficulty is we don't honestly have a lot of massing of properties like that right now. I mean, my crystal ball says that out of the revitalization area plan, we may see some suggested zoning changes or some upzoning or some rezoning, creating possibly some more mixed use opportunities, because that's kind of the goal of the project. But we're a little premature to kind of read into that what exactly is going to come out of it.
Particularly if we are looking at dealing with amendments to established approved master plans, which is what this scope really is. And so the risk assessment of that lost opportunity is probably very low, because I'm not sure how many approved master plans we have. I know we have one I think we have one in McNary. Right. So I think our risk is pretty low.
Okay. Well, having said that, then, I really appreciate what Matt brought to my attention, and I think there's minimal risk to wait and address this when we have a more complete project. It's only a year from now. And granted, who knows, something could happen tomorrow, and then shame on me, but I think it would be simpler if we really knew what the whole thing looked like when this revitalization is done, and only have to do this one time.
Let me ask a question. Then, just focusing on just Kaiser Station, what we're saying is, let's wait till the whole picture.
Wait. Okay. I'm processing, sorry.
You asked the question I wanted to hear, is what's the downside for waiting and getting the whole picture? And if it's minimal.
So you're
Well,
you're
I'm
saying
thinking,
go
wouldn't
ahead
it-
with these
it-
changes?
I'm concerned that we're going to have to revisit things. And that's not.
Kaiser Station is outside of the grant, the
Yeah.
scope of the grant. We're not touching Kaiser Station.
I think a more likely scenario is it may be the creation of whole new sections to address the revitalization area goals and policies, based on some of the things the consultant have talked about and some of the scoping language. I really think that I would be surprised if they would go and try to crack open this 3.113 as a section and try to jam it all together. I have a feeling it would probably live in its own section, just from the way our development code is structured. But that's, I mean, again, that's hard. That's crystal ball looking more than.
Well, no, I don't think that's crystal ball. We have a specific scope that we are obligated to stay within, and we have a manager that is watching that scope. So I don't think it's crystal ball. I can say with confidence, we would not be able to look at the Kaiser Station design stand. Now, is there something that may tie into it or something? Maybe. But the basic provisions of the Kaiser Station development code requirements is not going to be addressed in the code, in the grant.
Michael?
But would the general concept behind this amendment that could be global still be relevant to Kaiser Station master plan amendment?
And see, that's what I'm saying, probably not, because the Kaiser Station is governed by that established and discrete document of the Kaiser Station design plan. It's got all of its requirements, and the development code things that exist in the development code tie into that design plan. And that is not under consideration in the scope of the grant. You know, it would be a whole different process that we would engage in sometime in the future in context with UGB expansion or something else, but that's not on the table right now.
But could we, it sounded like you were saying it would be a new section, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I think that what you've got now, the way our development code is structured, we have this zone that's called the Activity Center Overlay Zone. And it's like literally 4 pages long. And it's like, we have, every property has a zoning designation. The Activity Center Overlay Zone is not a true designation as it is defined by specific areas. And we have 2 specific areas identified in our comprehensive plan. One is the Kaiser Station, and one is the McNary Activity Center. There is no other activity center, but based on the way our comprehensive plan is structured and what activity centers do as a whole, I believe that out of this revitalization plan process, there will either be the creation of a new activity center or maybe a couple, or there will be a modification to the existing activity center being McNary Activity Center, because that's one of the parameters we've given the consultants to look at, is a lot of McNary Activity Center is built out when Stats Lake was built. And so that boundary doesn't make a lot of sense when you have a completely, well, not completely, but almost completely built out area of homes and apartments and then this small area of business. And so we want to look at, the revitalization plan is looking at underdeveloped or undeveloped or redevelopable parcels and areas, how we can capture some additional capacity for housing and economic needs, and as well as looking at the transportation system plan and the transportation systems fairly closely. So that's why I say when I mean a new section, so we have the way that it's regulated right now. Somebody comes in for Kaiser Station master plan, which was specifically required by the design plan, which was a comp plan connected document. So the development code, it implements the day-to-day. So somebody wants a permit, they have to be consistent with my development code. Well, my development code triggers them, so then it gets consistent with the design plan, and the way we do that is through a master planning process. So I think that with this new grant, where we're looking at Cherry Avenue quadrant, Chemawa River, and North River Road area, and kind of our commercial cores, most likely what will end up happening is we'll either create a new activity center or overlay type zone, or it may be through a new way of dealing with a whole new zoning designation that would be more performance based or some. I mean, there's some different options out there, and I think until the community gets engaged on the project and the stakeholders get involved with having those meetings, it's hard to know exactly which way it's going to go. But it's very clear that it, like Nate is absolutely right, it would be extremely difficult, and I would say basically impossible, for us to change that Kaiser Station design plan. And so the identified need for an amendment process for Kaiser Station, it still exists and is on the table. Right now we have Area D that got a master plan approved when the tribes came in, like, I don't know, 15 years ago they got that approved, maybe? 14? 2004 or something, 5? I don't know. It was a long time ago. And, there's been no movement on that property at all. So we've always wondered, well, when are they going to come back in for some sort of an amendment to that one? And, you know, Area C's been amended, Area A's been amended a couple times, Area B's now been amended. And so I think that, you know, Nate, I think you pointed this out earlier, I think there is an importance of having this proposed amendment in front of you considered in a semi-timely fashion, in that as a developer comes in, whenever they're looking to amend something or move a building, you know, we want to be able to accommodate the growth and the development of the center. And up until now, there's been kind of some stumbling blocks in our way to deal with the fairly minor amendment. I think the Kaiser Dental building is a perfect example. We couldn't let them just get a building permit to expand their campus, even though the square footages were less than what was originally proposed. Everything worked from a development code perspective, but they had to end up eating up a bunch of time going through extra processes to get their process done. So we're hoping that this amendment, this proposed amendment to the code, would help them streamline that process. So, well, hope. I'm being positive.
Okay, good. The reality is it would be basically implementing what we have been doing. Those minor things, we have been processing them as we've described here in this proposed text amendment through a minor amendment. That it would go straight to council, that council would consider the conditions of approval, and that we wouldn't occupy everybody's time with a duplicative hearing process. So, so really, we've drawn on our experience as to how we've handled these things to try and make sure that it's reflected in the code. It's not particularly creative, and again, I feel some responsibility for this question that came up as a result of my conversation with Matt last night. So our preference would be to move forward with these specific amendments to the Kaiser Station sections of the development code, that we would then, based on, if I heard you right, we would then hold off on getting into these other master plans until we put them in context with the grant process that is underway.
I think that's what I heard.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, if I may, I think the nature of 3.11, 3.06, I mean, the applicability is pretty limited. I mean, anything that's going to be so substantive that it's going to require anything, I mean, you got no overall increase to the square footage, which, you know, could include additional buildings, landscaping issues, and some changes to the building design. Anything else has to go through essentially a brand new master plan process. So I don't think the substance of the master plan is such that would create any significant controversy. Again, this was really just clarifying language because, you know, wearing my other hats, I instantly went to, okay, is this applicable in terms of, because, you know, I go to comprehensive plan, which is sort of the overall design, right? And then my mind is, in master plans went, oh boy, how's this going to affect, you know, my other job in the Parks Board in terms of master plans, because the master plans dictate everything that we can and can't do within the park system. And I went, okay, well, I don't think that's the intent. That's why I started asking the questions. How do these apply? Could they potentially apply? And in fact, I think they do to a different extent than what I think is being done here. I think a lot of these are essentially perfunctory changes that won't have huge, substantial differences to what's going to happen in the current design. Again, mine was more as related to the clarification that this is specific to 3.113 in the Kaiser Station plan, master plan, and then, you know, I'm really happy to be able to give these two fine gentlemen some additional work to create master plan processes for the rest of the development code, but that wasn't my original intention. It was just an opportunity to clarify the language so that, you know, it's accessible. People go in there and go, well, why are they doing this design change? Oh, the Kaiser Station master plan says they can do that. Oh, great.
Well, they have extra sugar now. Matt, would you like to make a motion?
Well,
I need to close the public hearing. Mike, go ahead.
can I have a question about specific language that was put in here? Is that the time to do that now? Okay.
Mhm.
So in then 3.113.06 A1, page 7, for quicker. You've got site plan changes that have no increase to overall square footage allowed in the existing master plan and cause no increase in overall vehicle trips. For example, an amendment could be a change in the number of buildings and their location. So what you're saying is the amendment could be number of buildings, so instead of one 100,000 square foot building, it could be two 50,000 square.
As long as the other conditions are met.
Right. But if they wanted to increase overall square footage over more than one building, that would be beyond. Okay.
And that would come through the whole process. That would be a major amendment. It would come through the whole process, and there would be some very significant issues that would get tied in, such as the cap on overall retail, the flex space allocation. There are a lot of little funny stuff in the design plan that we would have to go through an analysis on. So that's why it would not be appropriate in any sort of way to try to do that as a minor amendment.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and close the hearing, and we'll have a discussion and a motion possibly. This hearing's closed on the consideration, proposed revisions of the Kaiser Station Development Code, Section 3.01. 3.101, excuse me. And 3.13 and 3.02.
202.
202. I haven't had my cupcake yet. Do I hear a motion?
Okay, so, Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that we accept the changes with recommendations to include the Kaiser Station master plan as all-inclusive language over the 3.101, 3.113, 3.202 portions of the development code, and to allow staff to make changes to Scrivener errors as necessary to finalize the plan.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? So be. What did Jean-Luc used to say on Star Trek?
Make it so.
Make it so.
Okay. Captain,
Yeah.
May have to change my phone number. I don't know.
Old business and staff report.
Okay, well, a couple of things you should know about. I referenced the fact that we are underway with the revitalization plan. We're also underway with the education outreach grant that we have. We had, this was where you got interviewed. Though they are now doing their analysis and they're developing the report that will come back. We anticipate to have a work session where the report is reviewed. And any additional questions or issues that that we want to have included. Obviously, again, this whole contract thing, we're governed by the scope, but anyway, so they're working on it. I have not received a date yet as to when that is going to happen, but it may happen in March, so stay tuned. We may want some flexibility with our date as to the date of the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Stay tuned. Sorry, if I had a date.
Just don't have it on St. Patrick's Day. That's
Okay, fine.
Or during spring break.
Thank you.
That's true. That is true.
We did talk with the
And everybody knows it's a bad week, so that part is good. So we are having a weekly phone conversation meeting on the revitalization plan. We have to establish both another stakeholder list. Remember, it's hard to keep these things separate in our minds, but this is a different grant. And so we will probably be drawing on many of the people that were participating in the education outreach. We're going to be calling them again. And so we're not exactly sure the difference of what the makeup is going to be between the Citizens Advisory Committee and, we're calling it the Community Advisory Committee. And the stakeholders meeting. So we anticipate to rely heavily upon the neighborhood associations. We're going to ask for a couple of people from the council. I'm looking at Kim. Probably on the Citizens Advisory Committee. So we're working on that, the makeup of that. A lot of stuff behind the scenes, and it's tough because everybody thinks, oh, it's just a report. But remember, these are all pieces of information that go into the overall complexion and dialogue about what are we going to do about our urban growth boundary. Because every meeting that I have, every year I go meet with Council of Governments, and just had this meeting just yesterday. It seems like a long time ago. And our land is being built out, and we're going to have to come to some decisions. So a lot of work is being done on it. The other thing I wanted to make you aware of is we've actually had, in the development code, we have a process where a citizen can apply for an historic district to be established. We have had an application filed on the Herber property. And so we are in the process of going through that, processing that application and trying to figure out what the approval requirements are, what the statutory requirements are, because the state has adopted new statutory requirements for historic districts. And so all of that is in play. So stay tuned on that one. And I won't say any more about that. So it's significant, and there's a lot of effort being put into going through that process. And I think that's all I have for you.
Gary, did you have a question?
Mr. Brown, a historic district for the property right up there, with the zoning and all that's already been approved, I believe that's been approved to be redeveloped.
It has, yes.
Can that be undone by becoming a historic district?
I don't have the complete answer to that question. I don't know. But again, the property owner also has a say in the process. So, and again, with the new statutes that are in place, there are, the property owner is involved in the designation. So
As they should be.
you would think, as well as would the council be involved.
There appears to be some demolition going on up there.
They actually applied for and received a demolition permit back in December 7th. How significant. Yeah, so they have applied for and received a demolition permit. They are under permit now for demolition.
Okay.
For all of the structures, or do they do that
All
building
of-
by building? Okay.
All of the structures,
Yeah, hurry.
except for the small house.
On the corner.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, you survived Walmart's or Weremart's
Yeah.
opening.
I'm not sure I survived Walmart, but
But Wearmart,
I
excuse me.
still have twitches. Yeah, Wearmart.
I'm more excited that Human Beings open now.
Okay.
Coffee shop with parking. One of the other questions I had with the new redevelopment or remodeling of Arby's, what about the bike racks?
I don't know, what about the bike racks? I don't,
Several years ago, when Taco Bell did their remodeling, they still left, our current code talks about within 50 feet. They didn't have to at the time, and the bike rack is way behind the dumpsters, way away. And when you go there, especially with kids, they right in the front. They're not going to go way in back in the dumpster area to park their bikes.
I will have my top staff evaluate that.
Okay, that's my 2 cents. Anything more from staff?
No.
Council liaison?
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report?
I don't
Have
believe
we,
so.
have we introduced our student liaison?
You were here last
Yeah,
month.
I was here last time.
Man, I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's.
I was either.
Do you need a vacation, Nate? I can say that because I just got back from vacation, so I'm just asking.
The city council meeting is on Tuesday, the 20th. So Josh, can you make it? Okay. So, anybody have any interesting information to share at this point? Yeah? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
It's going to be short and sweet. I do not have one because I was on vacation, so I wasn't at the council meeting on the 5th, and I have not watched it on Channel 23. I have gotten through all my emails, though, of being gone, so everything seems great.
And you might share why you're here tonight.
Well, yes, and I'm covering for Council President Parsons, who covers for me when I'm on vacation, and she's on vacation. So
Yes,
we
I need
trade
a
off
vacation.
nicely in those. We plan them, I guess, not purposely when each other is gone, but it does work out for us, and I appreciate that as well. So short and sweet.
Kind of fill in a little bit because she was at the traffic safety last week, and one of the things that she talked about a little bit about is the presentation that the school board did on the bond measure that's going on, and they actually gave a breakdown of our Kaiser schools, what the bond would do for that, and that, as she said, that's probably good reading for us as we think about when May comes around for a vote. One of the things that traffic safety's been we've had testimony after testimony is about McNary and the traffic issues. I know council has too. And there is at least provisions in that bond for McNary to change the entrance from Chamawa Road, rechange it, and where the soccer and softball fields are, it would be additional parking and entryway, and then the softball and soccer fields, they're in negotiation with St. Edwards to build them over there. So how much that would help, obviously it will help some with our problems with Newburgh and the traffic. So that's what she mentioned about, so.
You know, on the school bond issue, is that, I don't know if it's in there or not, but is the school district going to take some responsibility for curbs and sidewalks like at Kennedy and Cummings, which they've had?
For Cummings, for sure, it's on the bond.
It's on the bond, okay. And do you know if Kennedy is included in that? And if not, why not? Thank you.
Kennedy. Here's what they're gonna do. Anything else?
So just a selfish plug here for the, on March 17th, the Clyde Creek Watershed Council and Kaiser Rotary team up to do the Civic Center cleanup. It's a big event. We usually get between 75 and 120 volunteers every year. Council Freeman's been fantastic about showing up many times. So we spend time here a couple times a month, sometimes more. I would just really encourage you, if you've got an opportunity to swing by for an hour. You know, we need folks, anything from, you know, signing people in to getting dirty to moving things around. But it's a great event. Put a lot of hours into trying to beautify this area. And then one other thing, on April 21st, again, Clyde Creek Watershed Council and the Kaiser Rotary will be opening up the Kaiser Arboretum. So if you're not familiar with that, 76 trees, I believe, have been planted in November and January combined. And we're going to host an Earth Day event out there, and it'll be kind of a great opportunity to open up that facility and display the trees and just have a good family fun day type thing. So April 21st for that, and then March 17th for the annual Civic Center cleanup. So
March or February 17th?
did I say February? I meant to say March.
Oh, March 17th.
March 17th for the Civic Center cleanup. And, you know, I've challenged everybody on the Parks Board and other things to show up and just be good. You know, we spend a lot of time here. Let's make it pretty.
Before I do, I'll give my plug. This next Saturday is the celebration of Oregon's birthday, 159th birthday, and it'll be at the Capitol Building. The Monster Cookie bike ride will be featured. So we will have a display, and that is because of history in the Monster Cookie. Governor Greer in the 1900s, I've just learned all this in the last few months, did the first bike bill, and they taxed bicycles for roads. And because there weren't any cars, it was bicycles the big thing. So, and he rode his bicycle from the Capitol Building to Champoeg State Park and back, following somewhat of the route that we do for the Monster Cookie. So the Greer Foundation, Historical Foundation, has invited us to be at the Capitol to put on, to celebrate Governor Greer's Monster Cookie ride. So, with that, we're adjourned till March.
Yay.